Married for 3 years, yet my wife doesn't even know my birthday. On my birthday, she openly flirted with her first love right in front of me. She had long taken my devotion for granted, thinking my servitude meant I was madly in love with her. She believed I couldn't live without her, but what she didn't know was that my marriage to her was nothing more than an act of obligation, something I had been entrusted to do. Now that the promise has been fulfilled, I have no hesitation in leaving. Little did I expect that after my departure, she would lose her mind searching for me, even resorting to self-harm live streams to gain my sympathy. Chapter 1. Young Master, Miss Willow won't be coming home tonight. You should get some rest, the housekeeper gently reminded me. I looked at the dishes on the table, reheated again and again, now cold. My heart felt frozen solid. Blowing out the candle on the cake, I forced a smile and said, "Thank you for your hard work today. Today is my birthday." Willow had promised to celebrate it with me, but as the clock struck midnight, I let out a bitter laugh. How naive of me to expect anything different. A lady of her stature would never care for someone as insignificant as me. It wasn't until the dead of night that Willow finally pushed open the door, reeking of alcohol. She barely acknowledged me as I took her coat and helped her out of her high heels. "Why are you so late? Let me heat up some food for you," I offered. She waved me off without even sparing a glance. "Don't bother. I already ate outside." With that, she brushed past me and went straight to the bedroom next door. Picking up her phone, she said sweetly, "Honey, did you get home safely?" Her tone softened, her whole demeanor changing as if she were another person. I glanced at the phone's screen. The name, Makoto Ito, lit up, sending a pang of bitterness through me. Taking a deep breath, I felt the weight of inevitability pressing down on me. Finally, I dialed Madame Lu and said, "Ma'am, I'm ready to divorce Willow." Her voice was grave. "Are you certain about this?" Looking at the untouched cake on the table, I nodded after a long pause. "Yes, you don't need to worry about Willow harming herself anymore. Makoto is back from abroad, and she's genuinely happy now. She doesn't need me anymore." On the other end of the line, Madame Lu sighed deeply, her tone filled with emotion. "Child, these years have been hard on you. What you've done for Willow goes far beyond repaying a simple favor to me. Unfortunately, Willow's heart has always belonged to..." "Well, never mind. Do you have any requests? The Lu family will ensure they are fulfilled." I gazed out the window. I had been trapped here for too long. It was time to see the world beyond. "I'd like to continue my education. Please arrange a ticket for me to the United States." After hanging up the phone, I closed my eyes, lost in memories. My mother used to work as a maid for the Lu family. One day, she collapsed from an illness and nearly died. It was Madame Lu who sent her to the family hospital, sparing no expense to save her life. At the time, I had just received an offer from a prestigious university abroad, but I returned home specifically to thank Madame Lu. She was troubled by her daughter's plight and lit up when she saw me, my profile bearing a striking resemblance to Makoto Ito. "Good child, if you wish to repay me, can you help me with something?" That's how I learned about Willow's past. She had loved Makoto since they were children. Growing up as the heirs of prominent families, she adored him, but Makoto always kept her at arm's length. Too timid to confess her feelings, she chose to stay quietly by his side. Just as she mustered the courage to confess after Makoto's graduation, he disappeared, fleeing abroad to escape her. Devastated, Willow spiraled into despair, spending her days in bars and even turning to self-harm. Madame Lu, at her wit's end, saw me as a solution. To repay her for saving my mother, I abandoned my studies and pretended to fall for Willow at first sight. I guarded her closely, staying awake for 3 days straight to stop her from hurting herself. When Lu family rivals set a trap for her, I attended their banquet alone, risking my life. The most harrowing moment came when a company shareholder tampered with her car's brakes. As her sports car hurtled toward a truck, I threw myself in front of it to save her. For the first time, Willow panicked, clutching my hand on the operating table. Her voice trembled with fear as she begged, "George, don't die. If you survive, I'll marry you." But later, I discovered the truth. She wasn't afraid for my sake. My profile simply reminded her of Makoto. I thought I could eventually win her heart, but I was wrong. On our wedding day, I searched every corner of the house, only to find that Willow had spent the previous night looking for Makoto. From that moment, I knew I would never reach her heart. There's no point holding on to sand that slips through your fingers. Raising my glass to the wall that separated me from Willow, I smiled bitterly and whispered, "Willow, I'm giving you your freedom." Chapter 2. George, hand me the magazine. The next morning at breakfast, Willow called my name twice, but I was lost in thought. Staring out the window, she waved her delicate hand in front of me impatiently, snapping me back to reality. Lowering my head, I handed the magazine to her. "What's wrong with you today? You look completely out of it," she asked, her brows furrowing slightly. Her gaze then landed on the cake on the table, and her expression turned even more displeased. "You know I don't like sweets in the morning. Why would you serve this for breakfast?" I cut a piece of cake and placed it on my plate. My fingers gripped the fork so tightly that my knuckles turned pale. I gave a bitter laugh. Of course, Willow didn't remember. Why would she? With Makoto back in her life, how could she care about the birthday of someone like me, an imposter? I'm sorry, I forgot, I replied with a forced smile. Luckily, Willow didn't dwell on it. She picked up her coffee and sipped absent-mindedly, her eyes glued to her phone. Clearly, she was waiting for something. I stayed silent. The power of a first love is truly remarkable. It's been years, and yet Willow still can't let go. Just then, her phone lit up with a notification. Willow quickly picked it up, and the moment her eyes landed on the message, her cold, aloof expression melted into one of tenderness, a tenderness I had never seen in 3 years of marriage. I let out a bitter chuckle. When the fake becomes real, the real feels fake. This marriage, once an act of repayment, had evolved into something else, at least for me. But it didn't matter. I had long anticipated this ending. Taking a deep breath, I said to Willow, Willow, the divorce cooling off period ends in a week. I've already submitted the paperwork. Willow was engrossed in her conversation with Makoto and barely registered my words. She responded casually, Even though I had prepared myself, her indifference still left me feeling a mix of emotions. I'll be leaving for the US soon, I added. Still absorbed in her phone, she waved dismissively. Got it. She put down her coffee and rushed out the door, eager to meet someone. It wasn't hard to guess who. Watching her retreating figure, I couldn't help but call out, Willow, did you hear what I just said? Do you really not care at all? Turning back, she looked puzzled. Care about what? You're going to the US for some exchange program, right? You mentioned it before. And with that, she hurried away. I laughed bitterly. She didn't care. She hadn't even listened. It was true that I had mentioned studying abroad months ago, but that was in passing, and it hardly mattered now. There was no point in correcting her. None of this was important anymore. Willow had her long-lost first love back, and it was time for me to leave. Drafting my resignation letter, I headed to the Design Institute. Dean, I'd like to resign and continue my studies abroad, I said. The dean's face lit up with surprise. I always knew you had potential. I told you to study abroad ages ago. What's changed? Finally ready to let go of your precious wife, he teased. Everyone in Cloud City knew how much I doted on my wife, but I could only offer a bitter smile. Looking out the window at the familiar scenery, I thought, the flowers bloom year after year, yet people change with the seasons. Cloud City remained the same, but the person standing by Willow's side was no longer me. I said quietly, we've divorced. Divorced? The dean's eyes widened in surprise. After a long pause, he sighed knowingly. Well, love should be mutual. When one side gives too much, it's bound to wear thin. Perhaps it's for the best. I forced a small smile. Yes. After 3 years, I'm tired too. Chapter 3. After resigning, I returned home to start packing. Only then did I realize how little I truly owned. Though I had earned a decent salary at the Design Institute, most of my money had gone toward buying gifts for Willow. She had accepted them coldly, not even bothering to open the packages. Now, they were covered in a thick layer of dust. Taking a deep breath, I stood there, unsure of how to deal with these gifts. Suddenly, my phone rang. The screen displayed a name, Maria, Makoto's younger sister. I hesitated before answering. The moment the call connected, her coquettish and arrogant voice rang out. Willow, now that my brother's back, isn't it time you kicked that useless old man out of your house? He's such an eyesore. Another voice, deep and magnetic, interrupted her. Don't say that, Maria. Mr. Wong is still Willow's lawful husband. I didn't need to guess. It was the legendary first love, Makoto Ito himself. Maria scoffed. I'm not wrong, brother. Willow's heart has always been yours, even while you were abroad. Don't forget, before her wedding, she flew overseas to see you. If you had agreed back then, George wouldn't have even been part of the picture. Feigning surprise, Maria exclaimed. Oh no, did I accidentally call George instead? Oh, Mr. Wong, you're not mad, are you? It was clear that Maria had called me on purpose. In the past, I might have been furious, but now, with the divorce finalized, I couldn't care less. I stared at the phone in silence. Maria, emboldened by my lack of response, continued mockingly. Why would you be mad? You're just a live-in son-in-law mooching off the Liu family. Oh, by the way, Willow's going on a business trip with my brother for a few days. Don't forget to pack her bags. A man and a woman, alone on a trip, and I was expected to pack her luggage. My brows furrowed, but I remained silent. On the other end, I heard the sound of a door opening, followed by Willow's voice. Makoto, who are you talking to? She asked. It's George, Makoto replied. I was going to let him know about our trip, but on second thought, maybe I shouldn't. You're still married, and he might not be comfortable with us traveling alone. Willow quickly reassured him. Don't worry, he's always been understanding. Then she took the phone from him and said sternly, George, it's just a work trip with Makoto. You're not upset, are you? I remained silent for a moment before replying indifferently. Of course not. Go ahead. I hung up without waiting for her response. After playing the role of a fool for so many years, I refused to do it any longer. I turned back to the gifts coated in dust, plush toys I'd bought with my first paycheck, designer heels I'd saved for 6 months to buy, and handwritten letters I had written for each of Willow's birthdays. One by one, memories surfaced, as vivid as if they had happened yesterday. But now, none of it mattered anymore. I powered on the shredder and began feeding the gifts into it. As the machine roared to life, it felt as though I was shredding the remnants of my old life and preparing to start anew. Chapter 4. Sitting on the carpet, watching the last gift be shredded, I felt a strange sense of relief. 3 years, finally, I could live for myself. As the final item disappeared into the shredder, the sound of footsteps echoed through the house. Willow entered with 2 others. A young woman in an expensive designer dress strode in first. It was Maria. Her eyes swept over my disheveled appearance with disdain. Pathetic. Before she could continue her tirade, a clear, magnetic voice interrupted. Maria, don't be rude to Mr. Wong. A man in a crisp white suit stepped into the room. This was my first time seeing Makoto. His features were sharp yet gentle, every line of his face seemingly carved to perfection. He radiated an effortless charm, standing in the sunlight like a deity descended to earth. At that moment, I understood why Madame Lu had been so eager when she first met me. Makoto and I did share a striking resemblance, enough to make anyone do a double take, but the resemblance ended there. His confidence and poise were something I could never replicate. Smiling bitterly, I thought, a counterfeit will always be just that, a counterfeit. Maria rolled her eyes dramatically. Fine, brother, whatever you say. Then she turned back to me impatiently. Well, are you going to pack Willow's bags or not? Make sure you include plenty of clothes. She'll be staying with my brother for several days. I didn't even look at her. I'm busy. What? Willow, visibly shocked, furrowed her brows. For the first time, I had refused her. Makoto's elegant expression faltered slightly before he said apologetically, "That's my fault. I shouldn't have asked Willow to travel alone with me." Mr. Wong's feelings are completely understandable. He smiled at Willow and turned to leave. Makoto, that's not what he meant, Willow said hastily, stepping in front of him to stop him. She shot me a frosty glare. You said you didn't mind. Why are you acting out now? Taking a deep breath, I unlocked my phone and replied calmly. The dean asked me to prepare an art exhibition. It's scheduled for next week. I really don't have time. In truth, I had already resigned. There was no exhibition. I simply had no intention of playing their servant any longer. Willow had grown so accustomed to my care that she had dismissed all the household staff. Now, without me, she seemed at a loss. Maria's brows furrowed. What kind of art exhibit is more important than Willow's trip? Packing bags doesn't even take that long. You're just being lazy. A live-in son-in-law like you might as well be a servant to the Lu family. She sneered. Do you even know your place? Maria, that's enough. Makoto reprimanded her, then turned to Willow with a gentle smile. Willow, if Mr. Wong is busy, I can help. I've been packing my own luggage for years. With that, he walked into Willow's bedroom. Willow shot me a reproachful look before hurrying after him. I frowned. Even I wasn't allowed in that room during our 3 years of marriage. This entire relationship had been nothing but a cruel joke, especially in front of Makoto, but it didn't matter. Soon, I would be free. As they entered Willow's bedroom, a heavy crystal ornament suddenly fell from the wardrobe. It plummeted toward Makoto and me with alarming speed. Makoto, watch out. Willow's pupils shrank in panic as she grabbed Makoto, pulling him away. I had no time to dodge. The heavy object came hurtling down toward me. Chapter 5. The crystal ornament crashed onto my shoulder, leaving it a bloody mess. The pain was so intense that my vision blurred, and I nearly passed out. George, are you okay? Willow cried, rushing over when she saw me covered in blood. Her panic was evident as she instinctively let go of Makoto and ran toward me. I gritted my teeth, my face pale, and said nothing. Maria's voice rang out dramatically. Oh no, brother, you're hurt. Willow's attention quickly shifted back to Makoto. She anxiously examined him, only to find a few faint scratches on his arm, with tiny beads of blood forming at the surface. Makoto shook his head weakly, putting on a brave front. Willow, I'm fine. You should go take care of Mr. Wong instead. Willow looked at me, my injuries clearly far worse than his. She hesitated, her delicate brows knitted tightly, but Maria stomped her foot, exclaiming, what do you mean he's fine, brother? You've never even had a scratch at home, and now you're hurt this badly. What if it gets infected? Willow, why are you just standing there? Hurry and take my brother to the hospital. Maria, don't make a fuss. Makoto chided her gently. This is nothing serious. Willow, don't listen to her. Please take care of Mr. Wong first. As he spoke, Makoto feigned an attempt to stand on his own, his expression pained but noble. Seeing this, Willow's heart seemed to break. She bit her lip and, after a moment of hesitation, helped Makoto to his feet. Before leaving, she looked back at me apologetically. Makoto is a wealthy young master. Not like you. I have to take him to the hospital right away. Your phone is beside you. Call for an ambulance yourself, she said hurriedly, and with that, she supported Makoto as they quickly left, never once looking back. Lying on the floor, I watched their retreating figures, feeling nothing but bitter amusement. Was it painful? Of course it was. But after enduring so much pain for so long, I had grown numb to it. I struggled to grab my phone, but due to the blood loss, I couldn't muster the strength to dial. It was only when the housekeeper returned from grocery shopping that an ambulance was called. By the time I was taken to the hospital, I had already passed out from the pain. When I woke up, the doctor informed me that my right shoulder had suffered a fracture. Because of the delayed treatment, I would no longer be able to hold a paintbrush for extended periods. I leaned back against the hospital bed and closed my eyes. For an artist, what could be more devastating than losing the ability to create? Nearby, two nurses changing bandages whispered to each other. It's amazing how different people's lives can be. One of them said, "Look at Mr. Ito next door. He just got a scratch." And Miss Lu was frantic with worry. "But this poor man, his shoulder is shattered, and there's no one here to care for him." "Well, Mr. Ito is lucky," the other nurse replied, "to have someone who loves him so deeply." I let out a mocking laugh at the mention of deeply. "Your treasure is my poison." To Makoto, Willow's love was indeed deep and unwavering, but to me, she had been nothing but heartless. Unable to bear hearing any more, I discharged myself from the hospital that very day. I didn't return to the villa. Instead, I went to help the dean with the art exhibition. Immersing myself in the world of art allowed me to escape the pain of reality. I realized that my life was never confined to the Liu family's mansion. Without Willow, without Makoto, I could finally breathe freely. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of liberation. On the 5th day, after the exhibition was fully prepared, I finally turned on my phone. The screen was flooded with missed calls, dozens of them, all from Willow. I stared at the notifications, stunned. Willow had never once called me of her own accord in the past. What was going on? Before I could process this, another call came in. It was Willow's secretary. "Mr. Wong, where have you been? Why hasn't your phone been reachable? Do you have any idea how worried Miss Liu is? She's been searching for you like crazy." "Searching for me?" I froze. Willow, the same woman who had always been indifferent toward me, was now frantic over my absence. Had she really made all 99 of these missed calls herself? Chapter 6. What did you say? "Willow's been looking for me these past few days," I asked, my brow furrowed slightly. On the other end, Willow's secretary sighed in exasperation. "That's right, without you around, nothing has been going right for Ms. Liu. She's been snapping at everyone. Please, come back to the office." For a moment, I was puzzled. But hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh to myself. So that's all it was. I had thought perhaps my disappearance had made Willow realize my worth. But in the end, it was simply because she was too accustomed to my care. Hanging up, I muttered to myself, "If you can't handle a few days without me, what will you do for the rest of your life?" I was leaving for good, and that day wasn't far off. Nevertheless, I went to Willow's office. In the CEO's office, Willow stood by the window, holding a glass of red wine. Her long, slender legs crossed elegantly, exuding sophistication and allure. Hearing footsteps behind her, she turned around. The moment she saw me, her expression relaxed briefly, but soon a hint of displeasure flickered in her eyes. "You finally decided to show up. Where have you been?" she demanded. "I've been helping the dean organize an art exhibition," I replied calmly. Willow frowned. "An art exhibition? Since when do you know how to paint?" I poured myself a glass of water, ignoring her question. It wasn't that I had suddenly learned to paint. Painting had always been my specialty. The background artwork for our wedding had been one of my creations. But Willow had never noticed or cared. And now, I no longer felt the need to explain. "I just picked it up recently," I said nonchalantly. Willow rubbed her temples in frustration. "I didn't mean to leave you at home like that the other day. It's just that Makoto has never been injured like that before. He's different from you. You should understand." My hands, hidden in my sleeves, tightened into fists momentarily before relaxing. "Of course, I understand. He's a young master, after all," I said with a faint, detached smile. "Then why were you upset?" Willow pressed. "Because you left without a word. Makoto refused to go on the business trip with me. Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused the company?" There was a note of blame in her voice. In the past, such words would have enraged me. But now, I couldn't care less. I shrugged. "Well, I'm sorry about that." Placing the glass of water back on the table, I turned and headed for the door. "George," Willow called out, rising from her chair instinctively. I paused briefly. "Is there something else?" She hesitated for a moment before saying, "You always used to clean my office before leaving." Without turning back, I raised my arm in its sling and replied, You seem to have forgotten. 5 days ago, I got injured, just like Makoto. I can't clean your office anymore. Only then did Willow seem to recall my bloodied shoulder from that day. My injuries had been far worse than Makoto's, but at the time, her eyes had only been for him. For the first time, Willow seemed to feel a twinge of guilt. That evening, she brought me to a tastefully decorated Western restaurant. On the table sat a single chocolate cake. I looked at her, puzzled. Willow cleared her throat awkwardly and said, I was so busy with Makoto's return that I forgot your birthday. I'm making it up to you now. I stared at the chocolate cake, momentarily speechless. In 3 years of marriage, this was the first time Willow had ever bought me a cake. Ironically, it was Makoto's favorite flavor, but I no longer cared. The cooling-off period for the divorce was nearly over, and I, the stand-in, would soon take my final bow. Seeing that I didn't pick up the fork, Willow assumed I didn't like it. I thought chocolate was your favorite flavor. Why aren't you eating? She asked, a hint of concern in her voice. Before I could respond, an excited voice called out from behind us. Willow, you're so thoughtful. How did you know it's my brother's birthday today? And you even got his favorite cake? Maria pulled Makoto over as she spoke, her face alight with enthusiasm. See, brother, I told you Willow loves you the most, Maria added, practically bouncing with glee. Makoto looked at Willow, his handsome face filled with gratitude and warmth. I caught the flash of unease in Willow's eyes. Without hesitation, I stood up and offered my seat to Makoto. That's right. Willow went to great lengths to reserve this table for you. Happy birthday, I said, my tone calm and devoid of any resentment. Willow froze for a moment, her heart tightening inexplicably. George used to love me, didn't he? Why did he now seem so indifferent, as if none of this mattered to him? Chapter 7. Time flies. Today is the final day of the divorce cooling-off period. I packed my last suitcase, glancing out the window. 3 years. I would no longer be anyone's stand-in. Finally, I would live for myself. My flight was booked. Freedom was within reach. Just as I was about to leave, my phone rang. It was Madame Lu. George, we're having a family dinner today. Can you come by? I replied calmly. Madam, the divorce papers have already been processed. It's not appropriate for me to attend a Lu family gathering. Madame Lu softened her tone. Willow's been feeling guilty about how she's treated you lately. She's prepared a surprise for you. Consider it a chance to give the two of you one last opportunity. Please don't refuse. No matter how much pain I had endured, I couldn't deny that Madame and Mr. Lu had treated me kindly over the past 3 years. A farewell dinner seemed like a reasonable courtesy. As for Willow's supposed apology or surprise, I didn't care at all, so I agreed. The Lu family estate was tucked away in a quiet corner of the bustling city outskirts. The guests, Lu family relatives, were dressed in tailored designer outfits, glasses of fine wine in hand as they mingled and chatted. In my simple white shirt, I stood out like a sore thumb, but I was long accustomed to being overlooked. My eyes drifted to the center of the crowd, where Makoto stood like a star surrounded by planets. Nearby relatives gushed over him. Mr. Ito, tonight is a family gathering, and Willow invited you because she sees you as part of the family. You're so lucky. Even after all these years abroad, Willow has only ever had eyes for you. That's right. I heard she even reserved a table and got a cake for your birthday recently. You're the only one she's ever remembered like that. You don't know how devastated she was when you left for the States. She stopped eating and drinking, nearly losing her life. Mr. Ito, Willow's heart belongs to you. Before her wedding, she drank herself into oblivion and flew overseas just to see you. Every month after that, she went to the US, sometimes for work, but mostly just to catch a glimpse of you from afar. How could you still hesitate after all that? You're in your 30s now. Don't miss out on someone who loves you the most. The relatives' chatter painted Willow and Makoto as a perfect couple, completely ignoring the fact that I was still Willow's husband. I watched the scene, bemused. Was this Willow's so-called surprise for me? But in a way, this humiliation made things easier. It left no room for lingering sentiment. Rubbing my temples, I turned to leave, only to bump into Madame Lu. George, please, let me explain, she began, her tone tinged with regret. I shook my head and interrupted her. Madam, it's fine. 3 years ago, I was nothing but a stand-in. Now that the original is back, it's only right for the substitute to step aside. But I do have one request. Tell me, she said immediately. I glanced at Willow, radiant in the crowd, and after a long pause, I said, I'm going to start living my own life now. If Willow asks about me, please don't tell her where I've gone. For 3 years, I had burned myself out like a moth to a flame. All that remained was a faint ember, one I would protect and nurture for myself. Makoto was back, and Willow wouldn't care about the departure of a mere stand-in. I let out a self-deprecating laugh, though I doubt she'd even notice. Notice what? I turned to see Willow approaching in an elegant designer gown, her every step poised and graceful. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale. Nothing, I replied. Willow frowned slightly, sensing I was hiding something, but she quickly recovered. her confidence returning. "You've started painting, haven't you? I invited a renowned artist to introduce you to. You should be grateful," she said, clearly expecting me to be touched by the gesture. Instead, I raised my injured right hand. "My hand is injured. You should introduce the artist to Makoto instead," I said evenly. She looked puzzled. "He doesn't paint. Why would I introduce him to an artist?" Her confusion was almost amusing. Didn't the answer seem obvious? If Makoto wanted something, Willow would choose him over me without hesitation. I had simply made the choice for her this time. Trying to calm her, I said, "My injury makes painting difficult, and Mr. Ito is also an artist. It's a better fit. Go ahead." Willow stared at me, my serene expression devoid of jealousy or resentment. It unnerved her, but she had no time to dwell on it and walked over to Makoto, introducing him to the artist. The surrounding relatives erupted into cheers. "Look at them, they're such a perfect match." I knew it. Willow went to all this trouble to invite the artist just for Mr. Ito. "Mr. Ito, you should marry Willow. Her love for you is undeniable." Makoto's face flushed slightly at their words, though he didn't refute them. Willow, frowning, opened her mouth as if to explain but ultimately said nothing. I watched in silence, pulling out my phone. There were 5 hours until my flight. Soon, I would be free. Chapter 8. I glanced at the seemingly perfect pair in the crowd and rubbed my neck. The plane was set to take off soon. It was time for me to leave the stage. Makoto suddenly walked toward me, excitement in his eyes as he pointed at my chest. "Mr. Wong, I heard from the artist you met earlier that your brooch won a gold medal at a global design competition. Could I borrow it to take a closer look?" "Borrow the brooch?" I frowned slightly. This wasn't just any brooch, it was a piece I had worked on for months, created in honor of my mother. It held profound sentimental value. I didn't want to lend it. Maria, noticing my hesitation, snapped, "George, my brother only wants to look at your brooch, not take it from you. Why are you being so stingy?" Before I could respond, she reached out to grab it. I instinctively blocked her, not wanting her to touch something so personal. She persisted, her hand yanking at me. My patience snapped. I grabbed her wrist and shoved her away, causing her to stumble and fall. Makoto stepped forward, grabbing my collar in an attempt to defend his sister. In the scuffle, he accidentally pricked his hand on the brooch's pin. With a pained hiss, he pulled back, but the brooch fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. Makoto reflexively clutched his hand. Seeing this, Willow immediately rushed over. "Makoto, are you hurt? Let me see," she said urgently, taking his hand and inspecting the small scratch on his palm. When she spotted the thin line of blood, she panicked. "Call an ambulance," she exclaimed, her expression darkening as she turned toward me. "It's just a brooch. It's not worth anything." "Why did you have to fight Makoto over it?" she accused. Her words hit a nerve, and without thinking, I barked. "What the hell are you talking about?" Willow froze, staring at me in disbelief. It was the first time I had ever spoken to her like this. I continued, my voice sharp. "That brooch was a piece I spent 6 months creating. It's not just a trinket, it's a symbol of my hard-earned recognition. And you have the nerve to call it worthless. What about you? Do you think you're worth anything? Makoto destroyed my work, and yet you accuse me of taking something from him. Are you blind?" Willow looked stunned. I turned away, seething, but then noticed a sharp pain in my leg. Blood was streaming down my pants. It turned out I had been injured as well. The brooch's sharp pin had pierced deep into my calf. Willow noticed too, but just as she hesitated to let go of Makoto, he whimpered, "It hurts." Hearing this, she wavered again, staying by Makoto's side. I steadied myself against the wall and, with a calm expression, said, "It's fine. Take care of Mr. Ito." "I understand." Then I bent down, gathered the shattered pieces of the brooch, and limped away. I didn't want to be entangled with these two any longer. Back at the villa, I grabbed my suitcase, only to run into Maria and Willow's secretary. "Mr. Wong," the secretary said hesitantly, "Ms. Liu asked me to take you to the hospital." "What's with the suitcase?" Maria gave me a once-over and sneered. "So you're throwing a tantrum because you can't compete with my brother? What is this? A dramatic exit to make Willow beg you to stay? Don't even think about it. You're just a clown pretending to be important, and you'll never be more than my brother's stand-in." I looked at Maria, nodding calmly. "You're absolutely right. That's why I'm not making threats, I'm actually leaving." "What?" Maria froze, disbelief written all over her face. Everyone knew I loved Willow to the point of madness, willing to give my life for her. How could I just walk away? The secretary chimed in anxiously. "Mr. Wong, please don't joke about this. Ms. Liu does care about you. Why else would she send me to make sure you got to the hospital?" In response, I took out my phone and sent the signed divorce agreement to Willow. "I'm not joking," I said coolly. 3 years. I've given enough. Now it's time for me to live my own life." Without hesitation, I turned and walked away. The secretary, clearly flustered, called after me. "Mr. Wong, you can't just leave. At least tell Ms. Liu where you're going." I stopped at the door, taking one last look at the villa that had been my cage for 3 years. Smiling, I said, "She doesn't need to know. My task is complete." I had loved Willow. How could I not? After everything we'd been through together, after all the life or death moments we shared, but that love had drained me. I had sacrificed my education, my dreams, and my life for Willow, and yet I had received nothing in return. Even supporting characters deserve their own stories. I threw my phone into the fountain outside and walked away, ready to begin mine. Chapter 9. Willow spent the next several days at the hospital, tending to Makoto. Even though his injury was minor, she insisted he stay for observation. It wasn't until the 5th day that she remembered George's injury. "Where's George?" she asked her secretary. "Tell him to come see me." The secretary hesitated before replying cautiously. "Ms. Liu, Mr. Wang has left." Willow frowned. "Left? Where?" She assumed George was sulking again. After all, the last time she had prioritized Makoto, he had disappeared for days. But this time was different. George had explicitly told her to look after Makoto first. Frustration welled up inside her. Why does he always act so big-hearted in front of others but then hold grudges in private? Can't he act like a man for once? Annoyed, she scrolled through her phone to call George, only to notice an unread message from 5 days ago. Opening it, her eyes widened in shock. Cooling off period over. Divorce finalized. Divorce? Her body stiffened as the truth began to sink in. A week ago, George had mentioned something about leaving, but at the time, her mind had been consumed by thoughts of Makoto. She hadn't paid him any attention. Now, cold realization washed over her. George actually filed for divorce. For a moment, her face, usually cold and composed, twisted into an icy fury. He must be joking. He's doing this to get my attention, isn't he? Willow scoffed at the thought. In her eyes, George's every action was a calculated ploy to provoke her. With Makoto back, his insecurity was understandable. Confident in her assumption, Willow dismissed the secretary with a wave. If he wants to leave, let him. He'll come crawling back in a few days. But 5 days later, Willow asked again. "George still hasn't returned?" she asked during a casual dinner with Makoto and Maria. Maria froze mid-sip, her expression flickering with surprise. "No, Ms. Liu," the secretary replied hesitantly. "Mr. Wang hasn't come back." Maria seized the moment to interject. "Willow, why are you still waiting for that petty man? You've loved my brother for years. Now that George is gone, it's the perfect time to settle down with him." Maria's words barely registered. Willow frowned deeply, ignoring her entirely. "George, where are you? Are you still throwing a tantrum? Haven't you had enough yet?" Chapter 10. Maria noticed Willow staring blankly and waved a hand in front of her face. "Willow, did you hear me? George has already left. I saw it with my own eyes. You need to stop wasting your time." "With your own eyes?" Willow's expression darkened immediately. Her sharp gaze locked onto Maria, and she grabbed her wrist. "When did you see George leave?" she demanded. Maria paled, stumbling over her words. I saw him leaving with his luggage last time, when I went to your house with the secretary. I thought he was just pretending." How could she have known that George had truly meant to leave? The fury on Willow's face surged like a storm. George dared to leave her. All she'd done was spend a few days looking after Makoto. Was that enough to make him this angry? Angry enough to divorce her? Clearly, she'd been too lenient with him. George was nothing, a man who hadn't even graduated from college. Without her, who would want him? Her face icy, Willow turned to her secretary. "Call George. Tell him to come back immediately, and I'll forgive him." The secretary looked conflicted. "Ms. Liu, I saw Mr. Wang throw his phone into the fountain that day." Willow refused to believe it. She pulled out her own phone and tried to call George, only to realize she had never saved his number. Instead, she dialed the number that had sent her the divorce agreement. But every attempt was met with the same response: "The number you have dialed has been deactivated." Willow shot to her feet and stormed out, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Her eyes blazed with anger. George had abandoned her. She would find him. She had to see where he thought he could run. Maria, stunned by Willow's fury, didn't dare stop her. Even Makoto set down his spoon, watching Willow's retreating figure with a complicated expression. In the past, Willow would drop everything to run to him, but this time, all she left him with was her cold silhouette. Willow drove through the city at breakneck speed, her emotions a chaotic swirl of frustration and confusion. She wanted to find George but realized she didn't know where to start. She didn't know his favorite places, whether he had family in the city, or where he might go now. Finally, she pulled up outside the Design Institute. In 3 years of marriage, this was all she knew about George, that he worked here. It was her last clue, her only lead. The dean greeted her coldly, making no effort to hide his disdain. George had worked at the institute for 3 years, and this was Willow's first time visiting. It spoke volumes about their relationship, or lack thereof. To the dean, George was like family, and he wasn't about to show Willow any kindness. But Willow had no time to worry about his attitude. "Dean, do you know where George is?" she asked, her voice urgent. She had always thought of George as a dispensable part of her life, but in the few days since his departure, everything felt wrong. She missed his cooking, his quiet presence, the way he took care of everything without her asking. And now he was gone. She thought he was simply sulking. But this wasn't a Cold War. George had truly disappeared. His phone number was disconnected. His belongings were gone. And he clearly intended to leave her for good. She couldn't understand. George had loved her deeply. Why would he do this? Had these 3 years of devotion all been a lie? The dean's reply was scathing. "Ms. Liu, don't you think that's a ridiculous question? You're his wife. You don't know where he is. And yet you're asking me, a stranger?" Willow's throat tightened, and she had no response. She didn't want to admit how little attention she had paid to George. Leaving the institute in a daze, she realized her last hope was her mother. George had always been close to Madame Liu. If anyone knew where he was, it would be her. Willow immediately called her mother. The moment she asked about George, Madame Liu sounded surprised. "Why are you looking for George? The cooling-off period for your divorce has already passed." "What?" Willow's brows furrowed. Her mother knew the cooling-off period had ended. How was it that everyone seemed to know about the divorce except her? The realization hit her like a blow. She was the only one in this entire situation who hadn't known she was already divorced. Chapter 11. Madame Liu noticed the confusion in Willow's tone and found it strange. She had assumed George had already informed Willow about the divorce, but judging by Willow's reaction, it seemed she was entirely unaware of it. "Do you really know nothing about this?" Madame Liu asked. For the first time, Willow's composed and cold demeanor cracked. Her elegant face was etched with disbelief. "What should I know?" she replied, her voice trembling. She only remembered George mentioning plans to study abroad. How could she have known he was already planning to leave? But how could he bear to leave? She thought. Didn't he love me with all his heart? Willow's mind swirled with questions, her gaze clouded by confusion and an arrogance born of her privileged upbringing. If George said he loved me, then that love should last forever, not a second less. Madame Liu sighed at her daughter's stubbornness and tried to comfort her. "Willow, it's over. George has left. You didn't care for him anyway, so why dwell on it? And besides, Makoto is back. Isn't that what you've always wanted?" Madame Liu had thought her daughter wouldn't even notice George's absence. After all, everyone knew Willow had only ever loved Makoto. George had merely been a placeholder, a husband in name only. Perhaps George's departure was what Willow had secretly wished for all along. But to her surprise, Willow seemed deeply shaken. Willow didn't understand herself. Wasn't Makoto supposed to be everything I wanted? She thought. Then why is George all I can think about right now? She forced her face into a calm expression, though her voice betrayed her unease. "Who says this is what I wanted? Stop making assumptions about how I feel." Hearing her mother confirm George's departure sent Willow into a panic. A suffocating sense of loss consumed her. For 3 years, she had thought of George as dispensable, but now that he was gone, she realized he might have been more important to her than she'd ever acknowledged. Without George's care, her life felt riddled with inconveniences. He had quietly integrated himself into every corner of her world, and his sudden absence left a gaping void. Yet Willow couldn't believe George would truly want to divorce her. "He wouldn't leave unless I didn't want him anymore," she reasoned. There's no way Wang George would walk away on his own. As for Makoto, her feelings for him had been ingrained since her youth. Loving him had become second nature. But the idea of George disappearing from her life entirely was something she couldn't accept. Madame Liu frowned at Willow's reaction. "I don't understand you. Isn't this what you wanted all along? And George, well, he only stayed with you because he owed a debt of gratitude to my family." Willow cut her off, her brows knitting tightly. "Gratitude? What gratitude? Mom, what are you talking about?" Madame Liu froze, realizing she'd said too much. It was too late to take it back, so she decided to tell the truth. "When Makoto left for the States, you were a wreck, threatening to end your life. At the same time, George's mother was indebted to our family. When I saw how much George resembled Makoto, I asked him to stay by your side to help you move past that heartbreak. We had an agreement, 3 years. Once the debt was repaid, we would part ways, and there would be nothing owed between us." Although it had started as a transactional relationship, over the past 3 years Madame Liu had come to think of George as a true son-in-law. But George had never forgotten his role. He continued to address her as Madam with respectful detachment, a reminder that he saw himself as an outsider. She had hoped that if Makoto didn't return, Willow might settle down with George and spend the rest of her life with him. But fate had other plans. As soon as the 3-year mark approached, Makoto came back, and Willow's feelings for him remained as intense as ever. Caught in this predicament, Madame Liu had no choice but to let George go when he requested a divorce. Willow stood frozen, her body stiff and her mind blank. What? George had stayed by her side out of gratitude. So, he had never truly loved her. Everything he had done, every act of devotion, every sacrifice, had been because her mother had saved his mother. All those injuries he had endured for her, all those moments he risked his life to save her, what did they mean? But she had seen the way he looked at her, the deep attachment in his eyes. That wasn't something that could be faked. Would someone sacrifice their life for another purely out of gratitude? But if George truly loved her, why had he been so eager to leave the moment the 3 years were up? Willow stood there, dazed and uncertain. George, did you ever really love me? Chapter 12. When Willow heard the word agreement, the last shred of hope she had crumbled away. A whirlwind of confusion, helplessness, and anger overwhelmed her. She clutched her head, feeling on the verge of collapse. No, I don't believe all of this was a lie, she cried out, her voice cracking. Madame Lu, hearing her daughter's uncontrollable outburst, was equally stunned. Willow had always been composed and restrained, and it was the first time she had ever lost her composure like this for anyone other than Makoto. At this moment, she didn't even recognize her own daughter. Willow took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Since George had an agreement with her mother, Madame Lu must know where he went. With that thought in mind, Willow hurried home to confront her mother, her gaze filled with a final, desperate hope. Mom, you must know where George went, right? She asked. Madame Lu, looking at Willow's increasingly obsessive demeanor, sighed and replied, I did buy the plane ticket for George, but the United States is huge. How do you expect to find him? And besides, I could tell he was determined to leave. He might not have gone to America at all, and now that he's deactivated his phone, it's a fool's dream for you to try and track him down. Willow's eyes dimmed in an instant. George, she thought, you really are something. You came into my life like a moth to a flame, and now you can walk away without a second glance. Just as Madame Lu was about to say more, Willow's phone rang. She glanced at the screen. It was Maria, answering the call. Maria's panicked voice immediately came through. Willow, you have to come quickly. Something's happened to Makoto. Makoto? Willow didn't hesitate for a second. She rushed to the Ito household. When she arrived, she saw a matchmaker sitting on a leather sofa, accompanied by a beautiful young woman in an expensive designer dress. Ito's father was enthusiastically introducing the woman. Makoto, this is your aunt's niece, Laura. She just returned from studying abroad in France. You two are about the same age, I think. Makoto sat uncomfortably on the sofa, his expression awkward. Just then, Maria, noticing Willow's arrival, called out, Willow, you're here. Everyone turned to look in her direction, including Laura, who sized Willow up with a disdainful glance, her eyes full of mockery. Well, if it isn't the famous little Lu boss, Laura sneered, the one who clung to Makoto 3 years ago and caused him to run abroad. Now that he's back, you still won't let go of him. Willow furrowed her brows, confused. How does Laura know all this? Laura's disdainful look seemed to overflow. Though she had just returned from abroad, she seemed to know all about Willow's past, how she had followed a man around, forced him away, and even harmed herself for him. Willow had become the joke of the entire city. With a careless smile, Laura added, a woman really should know her place. Don't be too eager, especially when you're already married. To be blunt, your husband's at home waiting for you. Don't you think it's a little inappropriate to be thinking about another man? The slap in the face was as public as it could get. Willow clenched her teeth, her face flushing bright red. She instinctively retorted, there's no one waiting for me at home anymore. Makoto suddenly looked up, a flash of disbelief in his eyes. Are you saying? Willow met his gaze, her eyes filled with a mix of emotions. She replied, her voice steady despite the turbulence inside her. Makoto, I've divorced. At that moment, Makoto's pupils contracted in shock. Chapter 13. To be honest, Makoto's feelings for Willow had never been about love, but more about possession. Especially after noticing that Willow's visits to him abroad had grown increasingly rare, he became more anxious. Had Willow really been moved by that poor guy? Was his role as her first love being replaced by a substitute? Unable to wait any longer, Makoto returned, convinced that Willow would be waiting for him, eager to follow him like a lost puppy. But when Willow actually declared her divorce, he was stunned. How could George have done this? Leaving aside the fact that Willow was one of the most beautiful women in the city, George could never match the wealth of the Lu family in his lifetime. How could he just give up? But Makoto quickly masked his shock with a smile, as if victorious. Willow, you really divorced for me? He asked, a slight gleam in his eyes. Laura was also taken aback, her brows furrowing as she waited for Willow's answer. Willow lowered her head, her thoughts clouded for a long time before finally nodding. Her pride wouldn't allow her to tell the truth, that George was the one who had requested the divorce. Makoto's lips curled into a smug grin, but he quickly hid the triumph in his eyes and extended his hand toward Willow. With a tender, affectionate tone, he said, Willow, We've missed each other for so many years. What you did today convinces me that you truly love me. Let's be together." Laura's teeth almost ground to dust. What is this? She thought. These two are making a fool of themselves. If they're so in love, why bring me into this mess at all? Willow stood there, dumbfounded. In the past, her greatest wish had been for Makoto to love her. But now that this wish had been granted, she found no joy in it, because all she could think about was one person, George. Where was George now? Could 3 years of love be so easily discarded in his eyes? Maria, noticing Willow's stunned silence, quickly urged, "Willow, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and accept my brother. You've waited for him all these years. Isn't this the moment you've been waiting for?" Willow looked at Makoto's outstretched hand, but her mind flashed back to a different hand, rougher, with thicker joints. George had told her once that he'd started drawing in elementary school and would always use cold water to clean his brushes in the winter. So his hands were a bit rough. He hated drawing in winter, but that one winter, he'd spent hours painting a portrait for her, but she had never cared for it. She didn't even know where the portrait had ended up. Now she realized that George hadn't just started learning to draw recently. He had been doing it for a long time. When he saw her carelessly toss aside the carefully prepared gift, it must have hurt him deeply, but when she thought about it, George had suffered much more over these 3 years. His eyes had always followed her, but hers had never lingered on him. Every moment, every gesture of care from him had been met with her indifference, and his shattered heart had been pieced back together, only for her to break it again. When George left, he must have been so disappointed. Now, as she stood there, Willow's eyes stung, and her heart clenched. "I think I may have missed out on someone truly special." Maria, seeing Willow's reddened eyes, winked at Makoto and said, "Look, Willow's about to cry. As a man, shouldn't you be the one to take the first step?" Makoto smiled, clearly thinking he had won her over. It was as expected, Willow wouldn't refuse him, but just as he was about to take her hand, something surprising happened. Willow suddenly looked him in the eye, withdrew her hand, and firmly stated, "Makoto, I'm sorry, but I can't be with you. I need to go after George." The shockwave of her words reverberated not only in the room but all the way to France. Chapter 14. I didn't go to the United States to completely sever ties with the past, but instead came to France. After some time of recuperation, I was finally able to pick up my paintbrush again. Extra, George, there's big news today. My friend handed me a newspaper with a headline about Willow rejecting Makoto's proposal. Looking at those familiar names, I felt as though a lifetime had passed. But soon enough, I shook my head and continued painting. Elizabeth, puzzled, asked, "Aren't you surprised? Aren't you curious?" I smiled and shook my head. Why be surprised or curious about people who no longer matter? Since coming abroad, I had decided to completely sever ties with the past and say goodbye to the disputes of before. Elizabeth looked at me in disbelief, her jaw almost dropping. She thought, wasn't George deeply in love with his wife? Had he really moved on? But soon, she nodded, agreeing with me. "It's good that you've forgotten them. Those two scoundrels don't deserve any attachment." Elizabeth could be quite blunt. She continued, "You sacrificed so much for Willow, and she didn't even care. Now, she's just a joke. We don't need to go back to that fire pit." She also found it quite satisfying that Makoto, after trying to seduce someone else's wife, had ended up with nothing. I smiled at Elizabeth's playful manner, feeling a sense of relief in my heart. I had truly let go. The past 3 years felt like a fleeting dream, and now I had moved on. After tidying up my easel, I was about to leave when an unfamiliar number rang. I answered the phone, and Laura's voice came through the line. We had once been art school colleagues. With a hint of malicious joy, Laura said, "Senior, I have some good news for you. Your ex-wife is back in the hospital after yet another self-harm incident." I froze, confused. What was Willow trying to do? Wasn't she obsessed with Makoto? Now that I had stepped aside, wasn't that exactly what she wanted? Why was she still self-destructing? I didn't know. After I left, Willow finally realized my worth. Without my care, she felt as if she had lost the most important part of herself. When Makoto proposed to her, she saw her own heart clearly. It wasn't love for him but a long-standing obsession. Once she understood that, she used every resource to track me down, even asking my mother where I had gone. But I didn't go to America, so Willow couldn't find me. Her search grew more frantic, sleepless, and eventually, under immense pressure, she resorted to self-harm again. The whole city was buzzing about it. I paused, the thought of it making my movements falter. We had been married for 3 years. At first, I had done it out of gratitude, but eventually, I had to admit that I had developed feelings for Willow. But no matter how deep the feelings, I couldn't bear the constant pain. The moment I left for abroad, I had decided to sever the past. I wanted to live for myself. Let the past fade away with the wind. Willow's madness or her self-harm no longer had anything to do with me. The next morning, Elizabeth came early to ask me to attend an art exhibition. Today's exhibition was hosted by Anna Banana, a renowned contemporary Chinese painting master who had risen to fame in recent years. However, Anna Banana was extremely mysterious, never revealing their true identity, and no one knew if they were male or female. But rumors were that this time Anna Banana would reveal their true face, making the exhibition a huge event, with people packed inside and outside the venue. Elizabeth and I squeezed through the crowd for half a day before finally getting in. As the lights of the exhibition hall dimmed, everyone fell silent, holding their breath. The figure on stage slowly turned around, and when their face was fully revealed, the entire hall went completely still. It wasn't because of anything else, but because of the sheer beauty of the person standing there. Everyone present was an artist, so their standards for beauty were high, but this person before them met all their expectations. It was as if Venus had descended to Earth, but I stood there, frozen in place. Anna Banana. How could it be her? Anna Banana, now standing before me with a faint smile, walked up to me. Her exquisite face was full of fondness. George, long time no see. Chapter 15. Looking at her, my eyes grew misty. Anna. How had I never realized before? The famous artist Anna Banana was my childhood best friend. Anna. She was a year younger than me and had been sent to live in the countryside as a child. We had spent half a year together as playmates. Later, I learned that Anna was from a prestigious family, but she had been sent to the countryside to avoid family disputes. When we parted, we were reluctant to say goodbye, and Anna had promised she would be my bride. But back then, we were too young, with no way to stay in touch, and eventually lost contact. Anna, looking at my thin frame, also had tears in her eyes. Back then, in the countryside, George was a happy little boy, but now, he had grown so thin. Anna had known about me for 3 years, but when she returned from abroad, I had already married Willow, the heiress of the Liu family. At first, Anna had considered trying to win me back, but after seeing all that I had done for Willow, she gave up. Willow was someone George would have risked his life for, and Anna couldn't bring herself to fight for me. She left in heartbreak. Little did Anna know, my 3-year marriage had not brought me happiness. Instead, it had caused me immense pain. Anna made up her mind to leave the US and come to France. She had even learned traditional Chinese painting for me. I said, Anna, long time no see. As I spoke, Anna could no longer hold back her emotions and threw herself into my arms. We were both so emotional. After the exhibition, we spent a long time talking. Anna ordered a table full of food, all my favorite dishes. When I saw them, my eyes welled up with tears. Willow had been with me for 3 years, yet she never knew my preferences, but Anna remembered even after so many years. It really showed the difference between those who cared and those who didn't. Anna looked at me, holding my hand, her eyes filled with sympathy. She said, George, let's stay in France forever, and never go back to the country. Is that okay? She didn't want me to suffer anymore. I hesitated for a moment. If I could, I truly wouldn't want to deal with the people and things of the past. But my mother was still in the country, and I couldn't avoid going back. But if I went back, it meant I would inevitably face Willow again. Just thinking of her frantic face made me uneasy. I said, I won't be going back in the short term. I need to finish my studies first. Anna frowned slightly but still smiled gently and said, okay, everything will be according to what George wants. The next 2 years were spent focused on my studies, and finally, my design won the first prize in international Chinese painting, and I graduated successfully. That night, we celebrated with wine. I had finally completed what I should have done 5 years ago, making up for the regrets of the past. Looking at the moon outside the window, it was time to return home. One reason was to bring my mother back, and the other was to visit the dean. It was with the dean's support that I had the confidence to pursue my dreams, and now that I had achieved them, I knew he would be happy for me. When I returned to the Design Institute, I found that the dean had aged quite a bit. But when he heard that I had graduated successfully, he smiled broadly. He said, I knew it. With your talent, after further study, your future would be limitless. We chatted happily, but then the dean couldn't help but ask, do you know about Willow's current situation? She's not doing well. Not well. I looked at the dean, frowning. Chapter 16. It had been nearly 2 years since I last heard Willow's name, and with Anna greeting everyone around her, our foreign friends and classmates made a conscious effort to avoid bringing her up. The old dean sighed. After you left, she came to see me many times, always asking about your whereabouts. But I didn't want to drag you back into that fire, so I lied and said I didn't know where you were. A year later, she stopped coming. I later heard she had been in a rehabilitation center after a suicide attempt. I lowered my eyes and interrupted. Dean, that's none of my concern anymore. From the moment I divorced 2 years ago, I no longer had any responsibility for her life. In those 3 years of marriage, I had already given enough. Seeing that I didn't want to discuss it further, the dean quickly changed the topic. All right, Let's not talk about it. Tomorrow I'm hosting a cocktail party. It'll be attended by artists from our circle and some social elites. You should come. I thought to myself, it wouldn't hurt to make more connections with my peers. So I agreed. At the Liu family villa, Willow lay in bed, holding a portrait, staring at it absently. This was the only thing George had left behind. He had left so decisively. She remembered how cold that winter had been when George spent the whole season fixing and modifying the portrait, just to present it to her. But back then, she hadn't appreciated it. By the time she realized her true feelings, it was already too late. George had been gone for 2 years, and despite using all her connections, she couldn't find a single trace of him. It's only after losing something that one truly learns to cherish it. She had once thought that her pain was due to dependency and habit, but now she realized that it wasn't dependency. She had unknowingly fallen in love with him during their time together. She had been blinded by her own heart, believing that she loved Makoto, but in reality, Makoto was just a fleeting fancy from her youth. George was the one she truly loved. By the time she realized this, it was already too late. George had completely left her world. From that point on, she obsessively funded every exhibition and art studio she could find, hoping for the slightest chance to run into him. After all, George was a painter. What if she could meet him again at one of these events? Just then, her secretary knocked and entered. Ms. Liu, there's an artist's cocktail party tomorrow. Would you like to attend? Willow had been unwell recently and was about to decline when she suddenly seemed to remember something. Who's hosting it? The secretary hesitated for a moment, then said, it's organized by the dean of the Design Institute. Willow's dimmed eyes brightened slightly. Wasn't that where George had worked before? She said, I'll go. Maybe, just maybe, George would show up. She had recently discovered through her investigation that George was incredibly talented in painting. If it hadn't been for his sense of gratitude, he would have gone abroad to further his studies long ago. Willow gently caressed the portrait, her eyes reddening. George, I was the one who held you back. I don't even know if I'll ever have the chance to make it up to you. I dressed formally to attend the cocktail party, but as soon as I arrived, I saw Elizabeth, who seemed to have heard something and was pacing back and forth, muttering. How could she be here? I smiled and teased. Who? Your rival? She snapped back. What do you mean my rival? She's your rival. Elizabeth didn't have time for jokes anymore. Hearing this, my smile slowly faded. Are you talking about Willow? Elizabeth's brows furrowed tightly. Yes, her. The old dean looked surprised. I didn't invite her. The assistant, sensing the odd looks on everyone's faces, quickly stepped in to explain. Dean, the cocktail party has the support of many people from various sectors of society. Ms. Liu is one of the supporters, so that's how she was able to come. Hearing this, the old dean slapped his forehead, scolding himself for being careless. He quickly turned to me and said, if you don't want to see her, you can sneak out through the back door. I couldn't help but laugh. Dean, I'm not avoiding anyone. If I'm going to see her, I will. By now, I had completely let go of Willow. Although I didn't particularly want to meet her face to face, I wouldn't deliberately avoid her. Besides, the city was small, and we'd run into each other sooner or later. I didn't owe her anything anymore. With my wine glass in hand, I mingled with the crowd, casually chatting and exchanging toasts. Willow had also arrived at the cocktail party, but instead of joining the crowd, she stayed at the edges, admiring the paintings. For the past 2 years, she had been learning to appreciate traditional Chinese paintings, hoping that one day it would give her more topics to talk about with George. She gazed at the paintings on the wall, her thoughts wandering. George, I've changed so much. Where are you now? At that moment, she suddenly heard someone in the crowd exclaim, Are you Mr. Wang, the international first prize winner for traditional Chinese painting? I'm such a fan. Could you please sign an autograph for me? The name George made Willow's soul tremble. The frozen memories of the past 2 years came rushing back. She couldn't control her body, trembling slightly as she turned around. Just one glance, and she saw him, the man she had been thinking about for the last 2 years. In that moment, Willow felt as if time itself had stopped. She stepped forward, walking slowly toward the crowd, her eyes fixed on the man who was being adored by everyone. George was dressed in a tailored suit, his short hair neatly styled. He was gracefully signing an autograph for someone. Thump, thump. It was the sound of Willow's heartbeat. She grabbed George's wrist and said, I finally found you. Chapter 17. Before I could react, a cold, refreshing fragrance surrounded me. I looked up to see a familiar face. Willow tightly gripped my arm, unwilling to let go. Her beautiful eyes were swollen and red, tears streaming down her face. She choked. George, haven't you gotten enough revenge on me? Come back home with me. I was about to push her away when, suddenly, a pair of delicate hands forcefully pushed Willow aside. Miss Liu, you're being very rude. Anna, in a white dress, her hair neatly styled, stood firmly between us. Her beauty was breathtaking, and and she blocked Willow with her high heels. She glared at Willow with cold, defensive eyes. Isn't 3 years of torment enough for George? You two are already divorced, why should he go back home with you? Anna, thinking of the pain I had suffered over those 3 years, wished she could tear Willow's flawless face apart. Willow shook her head, denying it. No, that's not it. I will change. Willow stepped forward, about to grab my hand again. After I had disappeared for 2 years, she was terrified that if she blinked, I would vanish once more. Anna spoke sharply. Change? Willow, you need to understand. You no longer have a future with him. She stood her ground in front of me, her words cutting deep. Willow couldn't hear Anna's voice anymore. Her eyes were fixed on me, and when she saw the indifference in my gaze, her heart shattered. How could I look at her like this? It was as though I was staring at a stranger. Had those 3 years of marriage meant nothing to me? Willow had so many questions she wanted to ask, like where I had gone these past 2 years, what I had been doing, and why I had left without a word. But in the end, all she could ask was, why did you leave me? I had thought that seeing Willow again would stir a great emotional response in me, but I was surprised to find that I had already let go. I spoke calmly. Didn't Mrs. Liu tell you? Our marriage was nothing but a debt of gratitude from the start. Gratitude? Willow asked, furious. She stepped closer, grabbing my shoulders tightly. Do you think I'm a fool? Would you risk your life just for gratitude? I don't believe that in these 3 years. You didn't love me. I pulled away from her grip and took a deep breath. Looking her in the eyes, I said seriously, love or no love, it's all in the past now. Willow, we're divorced. There's no point in talking about it anymore. I had married into the Liu family before I had even graduated from university. Willow was the first woman I had ever gotten close to, and she was as beautiful as a flower. How could I not be moved? I had tried to be good to Willow, but every time I started to care, Willow would strike me down with her attachment to Makoto. Over those 3 years, I had lost count of how many times my heart had been shattered. I had loved Willow, truly, but no matter how deep the love, it couldn't withstand the constant heartbreak. The moment I decided to divorce 2 years ago, I had truly let go. I couldn't tie myself to a world that only revolved around Willow. I needed to live my own life. With that thought, I looked at Willow seriously and said, I've moved on. It's time for you to do the same. With that, I turned to leave. There was nothing left to say to Willow, and I didn't want to ruin the host's event. Willow tried to step forward and stop me, but Anna swiftly pushed her aside. Miss Liu, have some dignity. Anna gave Willow a cold glare before turning and following me. Willow could only watch helplessly as we walked away. The event went smoothly, but I wasn't in the mood to stay, so Anna and I left early. As we were about to leave, a familiar figure suddenly approached us. It was Willow's secretary. I finally caught up with you, Mr. Wang, she said. This is a gift from our young mistress. Please accept it. She opened a box, revealing a beautiful watch inside. I couldn't help but laugh sarcastically. Willow, why bother? Makoto was the one who liked expensive watches, I said. Please tell Willow that I will not touch anything Makoto likes. And I took a deep breath and said slowly, I never liked watches to begin with. Chapter 18. The secretary's smile froze immediately, and she stood there awkwardly, unsure of what to do. She asked, Mr. Wang, then, what should we do with the watch? I didn't want to make things difficult for her, I replied. Please return it, and there's no need to bring anything else in the future. The secretary bit her lip and left without another word. I thought I had made myself clear, but it seemed Willow hadn't given up. Every day, she found different ways to send me gifts, but without exception, I returned them all, unable to bear it any longer. Willow came to me. Why won't you accept my gifts? She felt that she had changed so much for me, but why wasn't I moved at all? Looking at Willow, so eager yet so pitiful, I suddenly realized just how tragic this all was. How much better it would have been if she had given these gifts to me 2 years ago. We had once loved each other, but we never truly fell in love. I looked at Willow and asked, do you still not understand? Willow's eyes locked onto mine, and in that moment, she felt a strong urge to turn and leave, because she knew the next thing I would say would pierce her heart. I said, it's over. No matter how many gifts you send, it won't change that. I no longer have any attachment to you. And I let out a self-deprecating laugh. After our divorce, shouldn't you feel relieved? Willow's heart shattered upon hearing those words. Her mouth opened, but her voice was hoarse as she muttered, no, that's not it. I didn't want to divorce you. At that moment, she was no longer the confident woman she once was. Her eyes were filled with tears and pleading. She choked on her words. After 3 years of marriage, I've grown used to having you by my side. But back then, I didn't understand my heart. I thought I liked Makoto, but after you left, I realized I had already fallen deeply in love with you. You're like air, you don't notice it when it's there. But how can anyone live without air? Now I realize my mistake. I've rejected Makoto. Can we start over? I looked at Willow's tear-filled face, and for a moment, It felt like I had been transported back to 2 years ago, but I no longer wanted to return to the past. Those days, where I put others first, were nothing but torture for me. I collected my emotions and looked at Willow, my gaze completely devoid of affection. I said, "Willow, what you feel for me is not love, it's dependency. Or rather, you just can't stand being without someone who would sacrifice everything for you. You're chasing after illusions, whether it's me or Makoto. We're just tools to fulfill your longing for deep affection. The only person you truly love is yourself." The color drained from Willow's face in an instant. My words laid bare the painful truth in front of her eyes. All the pretty lies she had woven about love and affection vanished in that moment. What she had thought was love was nothing but her own misguided notion of deep affection. At that moment, I no longer compromised, no longer allowed myself to bend for anyone. Without saying another word, I turned and walked away. But just as I stepped out, I received a call from Mrs. Liu. Looking at the phone, I already knew what she wanted to say, but I still answered. She said, "Good child, you're finally back." I didn't respond because 5 years ago, when I first entered the Liu family, Mrs. Liu had spoken to me in the same tone. Behind the honeyed words were always sharp blades. I was grateful for everything Mrs. Liu had done for my mother, and I appreciated it deeply. I had been willing to repay her with my life, but there's only so much one can sacrifice for others. I had already given everything to Willow once, and I had nothing left to give. I asked, "Madam, is there something you need?" She said, "George, please, I'm asking you as a mother, give Willow another chance. Look at what she's become for you. Please, understand the heart of a mother." When I heard this, instead of feeling moved, I felt a surge of anger. Understand the heart of a mother. Did she ever consider my mother's heart? Mrs. Liu wanted her daughter to move on, but she wanted someone else's son to sacrifice everything. Everyone has a mother who raised them. Mrs. Liu thought only of her own child, but did she ever consider how other mothers would feel? People in the upper echelons of society are always selfish, thinking the world revolves around them, as if anyone beneath them is insignificant. But even ants have their feelings. Chapter 19. I said, "If you want me to understand your feelings, then have you ever considered how my mother feels?" My amber-colored eyes flickered, filled with mockery. After a brief pause, I continued, "Madam, I've repaid my debt, and I cannot fulfill your request." Mrs. Liu seemed to be taken aback. The obedient young man she remembered was now so resolute. When she heard I had graduated from a prestigious university and won international awards, she thought I was now worthy of staying in the Liu family. But who could have guessed that I would reject her so decisively? Before Mrs. Liu could say anything else, I added, "Of course, I am grateful for the help you gave my mother back then, but that's another matter. We're even now. From now on, we owe each other nothing." I ended the call abruptly. If Mrs. Liu had just called to chat, I might have still had a favorable opinion of the Liu family. But since she was once again trying to push me into the fire, I couldn't bear it any longer. She only cared about her own daughter's feelings and never considered the lives of others. Mrs. Liu, enraged that I had hung up on her, was furious. Who was George? A poor boy from a humble background. How dare I speak to her like this? But no matter how angry Mrs. Liu was, she didn't dare do anything to me because I was no longer the same person. After hanging up, I walked out with big strides. Willow was still following me, relentlessly chasing after me. Seeing the look on my face, she couldn't help but step forward. "George, why do you look so terrible?" I smiled bitterly in anger and spun around. "It's because of your dear mother. She doesn't want you to make the same mistake again. So she expects me to abandon everything and stay by your side just like I did 5 years ago." "Willow, you and your mother are both so selfish." Willow's face turned pale upon hearing this. She didn't expect her mother to have called me. In the past, her mother had indeed said that George stayed with her only out of gratitude. During those 3 years, I had no freedom, no studies, no friends, everything revolved around her. If Willow had to live like that for 3 months, she would go mad. But I lived like that for 3 years. 3 years. Willow's eyes reddened, and she said, "George, it won't be like this anymore. I will treat you well from now on." As she stepped forward, I took a step back, my face cold. I said, "Don't come after me anymore, and don't interfere with my life. I no longer want anything to do with you or the Liu family." With that, I turned and walked away, not giving Willow a chance to say anything more. Willow stood there, her head hanging low in sorrow. In the next few days, she didn't bother me again. I felt much more at ease. One day, I was on my way to visit the Su family, bringing some gifts from abroad. Anna was overjoyed. In fact, she had always had feelings for George, but she had been worried that he was too hurt to open up again, so she hadn't rushed to express her feelings. But seeing George willingly come to her home, she was so happy that she asked her mother to host a banquet to welcome him. Mrs. Liu, in a cheerful mood, even announced to everyone that she was about to have a son-in-law. I smiled awkwardly but didn't take it seriously. How could a divorced man like me be worthy of Anna? By the time I arrived, the banquet hall was already packed with prominent figures. Elizabeth was chatting with me, while Anna, though busy with the guests, kept her eyes on me, making sure no one dared to disturb me. "George, how dare you come back to the country?" I heard an angry voice from behind. I recognized the voice instinctively and turned around. Maria was storming toward me. She said, "Do you know what my brother has been through these past 2 years? Today, I'm going to teach you a lesson." Maria's anger boiled over as soon as she saw me. It was all George's fault. After the divorce, he kept haunting them. Now, everyone in the city was mocking Willow for refusing to marry her brother for a poor guy. Her brother had been sent abroad by their father, all because of George. Before I could react, she raised her hand and slapped me with all her might. "George, watch out," Anna shouted. I turned in surprise, just in time to grab Maria's wrist and yank her sideways. We were near the pool, and she fell straight into the water. Splash. The sound of the splash echoed across the room. Someone fell in the pool. Willow, who was attending the banquet, rushed over in panic. "Maria can't swim. Why aren't you helping her?" "Anna, don't go too far." But this was the Sue family's event, and the Liu family had no authority here. The servants all stood by, watching the scene in silence. It wasn't until Anna saw Maria sinking that she reluctantly called for help to pull her out. Anna then turned to Willow and said coldly, "Miss Liu, you're truly generous. Maria attends our family's banquet and disrespects our guest. Shouldn't I teach her a lesson? Or does Miss Liu think that George, who fell into the pool, deserved it, and not Maria?" Chapter 20. Aren't George and my brother's lives worth less than those of you aristocrats? Anna's words were sharp, and her gaze was unforgiving. It wasn't like that. Willow's face turned pale, and she hurriedly looked at me, instinctively wanting to explain, but the look in my eyes held no trace of affection. Maria was pulled from the water, still furious. "It's all your fault. If it weren't for you, my brother wouldn't be the laughingstock of the city." Her brother had once been the pride of the city, the most sought-after bachelor, but now everyone knew that Willow had rejected him for a poor guy, causing him to be sent abroad. How could Maria not hate me? What was I? A stand-in? A poor nobody? How could I be compared to her brother? I sneered. "It's my fault. I found this laughable," I said. 2 years ago, I divorced Willow because of your brother. He destroyed a family first. How dare he blame me? This is karma. Whatever consequences he brought upon himself, he has to bear." Maria shook with rage, and the crowd around her started to view her with disdain. Yes, everyone knew how deeply I had loved Willow, but I still chose to divorce her. What hidden truth could there be? It was all Makoto's doing. No wonder Makoto proposed to Willow as soon as she divorced. People found not only Makoto ridiculous, but also shameful. Willow turned to Maria and said coldly, "Enough, Maria. Even though my brother and I are friends, it doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. Apologize to George now." Maria froze, and then, incredulously, she screamed, "Willow, you want me to apologize to George, a poor, useless man who's just a substitute for my brother? Why should I apologize to him? I won't apologize, and I'll tear that hypocritical face of his apart." Before she could finish, she reached out to slap me, but in the next moment, something unexpected happened. Smack! I grabbed Maria's wrist and slapped her hard across the face. I said firmly, "Maria, just because I haven't hit you before doesn't mean I'm easy to talk to. If you don't stop, I won't go easy on you." Then I turned to Willow and coldly said, "Keep your first love sister in check. Don't let her keep coming after me." Willow's fingers dug deep into her palm as she gritted her teeth, instructing one of the servants, "Take Miss Ito back. From now on, don't let her appear anywhere George is." The servant stepped forward immediately. Maria, however, wasn't done. She yelled after us, "I won't let you off. We'll see about that." As Maria was dragged away, Willow, intending to comfort me, opened her mouth. I interrupted coldly, "If Miss Liu could act like Maria and stop disturbing my life, that would be great." With that, I turned and walked away. Anna walked up to Willow's ear and warned her, "Did you hear that? George doesn't want to see you anymore. Don't come bothering him again." Willow watched us walk away, her teeth clenched, her eyes filled with despair like never before. But what Willow didn't know was that, once she returned home, an even greater blow awaited her. She had just returned to the Liu family when she heard a violent argument coming from the villa. Chapter 21. In the villa, Liu father had just returned home when he angrily pointed his finger at Liu mother's nose, scolding her, "Susan, I left the family under your care, and this is how you manage it. The company is in ruins. Our son-in-law has been driven away, and now you're letting your daughter provoke the Sue family's young lady." "Sue family, do you know who they are? They are the most prestigious family in the city. Do you think you can just mess with them? You're brainless. How did I ever marry you?" Liu father and Liu mother had known each other when they were young, So he trusted her enough to leave the family's affairs in her hands while he focused on expanding his career. Who would have thought that when he returned, he would find everything in such disarray that it nearly made him faint with rage? Willow hurriedly approached her father, saying, "Dad, when did you come back? You can't blame Mom for everything. It's actually my fault." Lou's father ignored her and snapped, "What do you mean, your fault? I've been grooming you to take over the family business, and look at what you've done these past years. Caught up in your emotions, nearly killing yourself over a man and self-harming. How could I have raised such a useless daughter? And you." He suddenly turned around and pointed at Lou's mother. "You, the head of this household, instead of supporting your daughter and protecting the family, you've spoiled her rotten. You've turned our son-in-law into a servant. If I hadn't come back, this whole Lou family would have been ruined under your watch." Willow had never been reprimanded like this before, and she stood there, stunned. Lou's mother hurriedly pushed her upstairs, saying, "Go upstairs first, old man. Let me explain." She thought if she could get rid of her daughter and plead with her husband, things might be salvaged. But once Willow was upstairs, Lou's father's face turned completely cold. He looked at his wife, his expression emotionless. While he had been out fighting for the family, his wife had been sabotaging everything. Their daughter, whom he had nurtured, had been ruined, and the company was a mess. He hadn't even known until now about his daughter's self-destructive behavior, all because she'd been kept locked up in the Lou family by Lou's mother for 3 years. The Lou family had fallen this far due to her actions. A bad daughter would ruin 3 generations. Lou's father took a deep breath and grabbed an envelope from his secretary. He said coldly, "From now on, you're not allowed to interfere with the Lou family business. I'm divorcing you." "What?" Lou's mother was struck as if by a bolt of lightning. She thought this matter could be smoothed over, but she never imagined her husband would actually ask for a divorce. Without the title of Lou family's wife, she would be nothing. She begged, "No, please. I know I was wrong. Give me another chance. I'll never spoil Willow again. We still have her." Lou's mother kneeled, clinging desperately to her husband's leg. When Lou's father heard Willow's name, it made him even more resolute. He pushed Lou's mother away coldly and said, "I'm divorcing you for the sake of the child." Willow had only been under her mother's care for a few years, but she had been spoiled to such an extent. If they continued this way, who knew how she'd turn out? The Lou family couldn't be destroyed by this woman. He turned and walked upstairs. Lou's father sat opposite Willow, who was visibly uneasy. In her memories, her father had always been strict, and he would often punish her when she was a child. Compared to her father, her mother had always been much gentler, even spoiling her at times. Time passed second by second, and Willow was becoming more and more uncomfortable. Finally, Lou's father spoke, his cold eyes fixed on her. "Your mother and I are getting a divorce." "What, father? You can't." Willow's pupils widened in shock, but before she could finish her sentence, Lou's father interrupted her. "Isn't it because of you? You've ruined everything. For a man, you self-harmed and let everyone in the city laugh at us. I've lost all faith. From now on, I'll be taking over Lou Group. You're going to the foreign branch. If you don't perform, you'll never return." Every word from Lou's father felt like a sharp knife stabbing deep into Willow's flesh. For a moment, she felt suffocated. How did things end up this way? It was as if, in one night, she had lost everything. The news of Willow being sent to the foreign branch soon reached Elizabeth. She was delighted and shared the news with me. I remained indifferent, focusing on booking my flight. She asked, "You're leaving so soon?" I shook my head helplessly. "Staying here just causes more trouble. It's better to leave early." I didn't want to see Willow anymore, nor did I want to worry about the past. Anna said she was going to leave with me. I was ready to start a new life. Chapter 22. After booking my flight, Elizabeth seemed to recall something and reminded me, "By the way, be careful on your way to the airport." "Why?" She replied, "I'm not sure, but I heard Maria ran away from home. She's been holding a grudge against you because her brother's life is miserable abroad." Elizabeth looked worried. "I'm afraid she might try to take revenge on you." I smiled and shook my head, not taking it seriously. What can a woman like that do to me? But Elizabeth's next words caught my attention. She said, "You didn't know. Makoto is doing poorly abroad. He's been shunned by high society because he meddled in your marriage. Now, even the Ito family has disowned him. The Ito family has many children. The Ito patriarch chose to keep his son's reputation intact and publicly severed ties with Makoto. I heard he's now living off Maria's support." My pupils contracted at this revelation. I had thought that even though Makoto might be in trouble, he'd still have some status, but I didn't expect the Ito patriarch to be so ruthless. But then again, wasn't Lou family just as cruel? In the world of high society, interests always came first. I stood silent for a long time, not sure if I should feel relieved or satisfied. But in the end, it didn't matter anymore. I was ready to move on. I hadn't made a fuss or drawn too much attention. After having a drink with the old dean, I prepared to leave. Autumn had passed, and winter was coming. I wanted to go to a warm place to spend the winter. Anna and I were at the airport, just about to check in our luggage when a familiar voice called out from behind. George. I didn't need to turn around to know it was Willow. Anna furrowed her brow and sharply said, "What do you want now?" Willow pushed past Anna and looked at me, her eyes full of reluctance. "George, I'm leaving the country. I won't bother you anymore. I just have a few last questions. Can you give me the chance to ask?" Anna retorted. "How much longer do you plan to cling to George?" Anna was about to call for security when Willow said, "I'll leave after I ask. If not, none of you are leaving today." Willow stubbornly blocked our path. I sighed and calmly said to Anna, "You wait for me outside. I'll be right back." It was time to bring closure to this matter with Willow. According to Elizabeth, Willow was being sent abroad by her father. With the distance between us, this could very well be our last meeting. I asked, "What do you want to ask?" Willow's eyes brightened when she realized I was willing to listen. She said, "George, I want to know, did you ever like me these past 3 years?" Her eyes were filled with expectation. I looked at her seriously and then laughed, a mocking smile playing on my lips. I said, "Willow, from the moment you chose Makoto over me time and again, I never had any feelings for you." My eyes became distant, as though I was looking at a stranger. I continued, "You were my wife, yet your attention was always on someone else. You never understood my sacrifices, my pain. You don't even know my preferences or likes. What you call liking me was only because no one else would care for you like that, even risking their life for you. You've always been selfish, thinking that the world should revolve around you with just a snap of your fingers. But true love is selfless. It's seeing the other person thrive and feeling your life has meaning because of it. It's mutual sacrifice, mutual support, never letting go, even in the most difficult times. But you've let go of my hand too many times. I don't want to hold on anymore." I looked into Willow's eyes and spoke clearly. "Willow, that's all I have to say. We don't need to see each other again." Chapter 23. I turned around and walked briskly toward the door. Today, I finally said everything I had wanted to say in those 3 years, and both of us could be free from this. Willow stood there, watching George's indifferent expression, her heart twisting painfully. From a young age, her family had taught her how to be a good heir and how to prosper the family, but they had never taught her how to love. But by the time she realized it, it was too late. Looking into George's emotionless eyes, Willow felt a chill in her fingertips. He had already let go. He was no longer trapped in their relationship. He was walking away. Willow suddenly felt a loss of control. She was about to lose the person she loved most. She wanted to stop him, wanted to keep him by her side, to make him see only her, but she couldn't, because George had told her, true love meant letting go. A bitter smile crossed Willow's face. Just as George was about to leave, a sharp voice rang out from behind. "I want your life." I instinctively turned around, only to see a woman frantically charging at me with a knife. "George, be careful." Willow's panicked voice reached my ears before I could react. In the next instant, a blinding flash of the knife struck. The sound of the blade sinking into flesh followed. Maria had gone insane. After being confined, she felt humiliated that she, a daughter from a prestigious family, and her brother, both of them heirs, were brought so low by a poor man. The rage inside her turned into a murderous desire. Who would have thought Willow was there too? In that life or death moment, Willow suddenly pushed me aside and stood in front of me. Maria, caught off guard, still managed to slash down. Willow's delicate face immediately bore a deep gash, and she collapsed unconscious, bleeding. She was rushed to the hospital. When the Sue and Lou families heard the news, they were furious. They worked together to imprison Maria and completely destroyed the Ito family. I sat in the ICU, watching Willow with her face wrapped in bandages, but any sign of emotion was absent. It was a lie to say I felt no emotion. Seeing Willow lying there like that, I couldn't help but feel a deep sigh. I stayed by her bedside, intending to leave only after she woke up. While gathering my things, I found a photograph inside Willow's coat. It was our wedding photo. Looking at the picture of us, I suddenly realized this was the only photo we had taken together in the past 3 years. In the photo, my shy smile was accompanied by my shoulder slightly leaning toward Willow. But she, with a cold expression, seemed detached and distant. Maybe from the very beginning, our marriage had been wrong. It had always been one-sided, so how could it end well? We loved each other, but we never truly loved each other. I tore off my half of the photo and placed the remaining half in Willow's hand. When she finally woke up, I chose to leave. Willow stared at the half photo in her hand for a long time after she woke up. George had seen the photo. Suddenly, she remembered. After taking that photo on their wedding day, she immediately flew abroad to find Makoto. At that time, George must have been heartbroken, all alone at the wedding site, without his bride. The photo, full of love for her, but that kind of expression was something she could never see again. Willow clutched the photo tightly to her chest, tears silently falling onto her pillow. She had lost the men she loved the most. She was trapped in her past, while her lover had already moved on. Willow couldn't hold back anymore and began to cry bitterly. Her sobs were full of despair. Chapter 24. After Willow woke up, I didn't stay any longer and prepared to leave. On the day Anna and I were leaving, Willow struggled to get out of bed and came to see us off. Anna furrowed her brow when she saw Willow's face covered in bandages, showing some wariness. Willow, however, acted calm and composed. She gazed at me from across the crowd and softly said, "George, let's be friends from now on." I looked at her face, and a flash of pity crossed my eyes. Willow had always relied on her beauty, but now her face was badly scarred. I had asked the doctors, and even with the best equipment, she would be left with faint scars. I frowned and replied, "Sure, if you think so." Willow gazed at me, her eyes reddening. "I really regret it, not cherishing you back then. If she had treated George well from the beginning, her father wouldn't have gotten so angry, her mother wouldn't have been dragged into this, and she wouldn't have ended up like this. They say karma is real, and retribution comes swiftly. Now, this was her consequence, wasn't it?" I watched Willow in pain, wanting to say something, but the words just wouldn't come out. What could I say? Both of us had been deeply hurt by this relationship. Willow was now torn to pieces, but when I left, I was no different. Willow seemed to sense my suffering. She wiped away her tears and forced a smile. "It's all right," she said. I shook my head. "Willow, there's no such thing as regret. If we keep dwelling on the past, we'll never move forward. We both need to look ahead now." I was grateful that Willow had saved me, but gratitude isn't love. We had hurt each other and spent too long entangled in our mistakes. It was time to say goodbye. This was the first time I spoke to Willow without any emotions after our divorce, but before, Willow had always clung to her obsession, never listening to my words. Now, she understood. We could never go back. Anna and I boarded the plane to go abroad. Anna looked at me with her beautiful eyes, full of concern. She had always wanted George to be happy and thought that leaving him at the right time was the best choice. She never expected him to go through such a cruel marriage. Had she known, she would never have let go of George's hand, even if it cost her life. Fortunately, the heavens had given her a chance to make things right. Fortunately, it was not too late. Anna's delicate hand gently touched mine, and she asked, "George, there were so many people in your life before. Can I have a little of your love now?" I was taken aback, instinctively withdrawing my hand and saying, "Anna, don't joke around. I was just a middle-aged man with a failed marriage. How could Anna possibly like me? She had said she liked me when we were kids, but that was just a childish joke. How could she have meant it?" But Anna looked at me seriously, her eyes filled with deep affection and determination. She said, "George, I mean it. I've liked you since I was little. I want to grow old with you, to share all the joys and sorrows of life. Even in the toughest times, I will never let go of your hand." I looked into Anna's burning gaze. My heart stirred. I reached out and took her hand. "All right," I said, "just don't let go of my hand."